Hang on, got it. Let's get it. Looking at the Richard Burton exhibition.
Oh, I tell you what, the Richard Burton exhibition in Cardiff Museum is absolutely brilliant.
It is. It's so well presented, and of course they've got his garments, uniforms he was wearing as Mark Antony in Cleopatra.
Oh, Bill, I could see me in the Sophia Loren outfit.
I could see myself in that too.
Yeah,
with my knees and legs. Yeah, but it really was It really was. Apart from that, Carl, nothing Roman, I don't think. Not Roman.
Yeah, Cleopatra. Did you actually see my the exhibition that I'm with?
I did. I saw the dinosaur print, and I saw your little name as a contributor to the whole process. Yes, I did. Well done.
That's the only reason I did it, so I could get my name up there.
Yeah, good.
So okay, we're going to do
publicity.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll do a tiny little bit of Roman stuff today, and Richard apparently was talking to his missus, who's a proper windbag.
I know. I didn't realise what the sign was.
I tell you what. Pauline can talk for Ireland. Do you know what I mean? Do you know when you first met Pauline, Richard? Was it a matter of she didn't stop talking? You decided to go out with her just to shut her up?
No, I'm not.
Fair enough. Right. Okay. So we're looking at a little bit of a map of South Wales, and I think this is one of the original versions of the Ordnance Survey map of Roman sites, and I've actually got the enhanced version with the digest and everything, the one I show you every week. Somebody commented today. They said about my Roman book, because my Roman book had been posted in a local runners group for Caerleon, and they said, well, I'll be interested in this book if there's any route ways that I can run along as a runner. And I said, I said to Michelle, yeah, there is, because you could actually run from Neath all the way up to Caerleon. It's the San Helen, and you could go all the way to Colbren. It's actually quite a straightforward route. I've walked little bits of it, and I think Bill's walked bits of it. And then eventually you can sort of try to track all the way to Egaia, the Roman site at Brecon at Egaia, which obviously I think we've all been to as well. Now, the blue dot on there, I just wanted to mention briefly today. That's the site of Loughor. But whenever you do look at a map like this, and before they've started to add everything to, it looks a bit bleak in the Vale of Glamorgan. It looks a bit bleak in the valleys, and as you know from my recent book, Romans in South Wales, there's a lot more to this since the 1970s. Now, that's a blue dot there, and this predates the excavations that were undertaken at the Loughor Castle site. That was quite a big series of excavations in the 1970s and 1980s to reveal the Roman site of Loughorium. And it's a fascinating site with granaries. I haven't got a massive load of images with me today, but you've got a nice little bronze behind me, nice little mouse eating a little biscuit there. So that was actually found at Loughor. And then I wanted to sort of go into a couple of childhood things in regards to Caerleon, and then I wanted to go into a list of 15 unusual things about Rome, which is in fact something I should have done months ago, because we've looked at various different things. So the thing I'll be doing towards the today will be 15 interesting things about Rome. So moving on from the map as well, we all know where Loughor is, and then if we sort of look at Isca, we know where Isca Caerleon is as well. And just one quick thing, in my book, I don't know if you guys have read it, I compared the signal station at Caerleon with these signal stations across the water at Martinhoe and Old Barrow. That was a nice little bit of a comparison. It took me out of my comfort zone, and that was really interesting to write about. So what we do have is the fort at Loughor was a mainly timber affair. And this is a wonderful cross-section from the Glamorgan Grant Archaeological Trust excavations. And I mentioned the Glamorgan Grant Archaeological Trust today because that's when the Glamorgan Grant Archaeological Trust was actually doing really decent, important work in the 1970s and 80s. They were the ones who originally got me on archaeological excavation work, but you know my opinion about them today, which is pretty low. But things change. So we'll have this little bit of an image there in front of us, and I'm going to look at my notes and I'm going to read a little bit of information out. Now, we know there was something at Loughor way back in the 1800s, but we didn't really know it was called Lougharium, and we didn't really put everything together until the 1970s. That's why you've got a little bit of a blue dot on there and nothing really substantial. We started to know that the site at Loughor was quite a substantial site in the 1970s and the 1980s. So a Roman military settlement was first identified during the construction of a Great Western Railway. And I've got the Cov Line site in front of me. So that's where we're going to actually look at just briefly. And we need to sort of get that on there. And we need to do this. There it is. So with the construction of the Great Western Railway, which is here, they actually started to find evidence of Roman remains. And the castle as well is basically was constructed within the area of the Roman fort, which is something that I've been saying, that the Romans utilized, the Normans utilized earlier Roman fort remains, and the Normans after 1066 would go into places like Cardiff Castle, where there had been earlier Roman remains, almost aspiring to what the Romans had been like hundreds and hundreds of years earlier. So if we go back to the other image that I was just briefly showing, again, it's a really nice image, this, because, go back to my notes in a sec. It's a really nice image, and the reason why it's a really nice image, you can see, if I get my little arrow in there, you can see all the different layers of turf that have been built up over successive changes to the fort. And obviously this is going to eventually build a bank, which would have had a wooden palisade along it as well. And the fort at Lougharium, you can probably work out that the fort at Lougharium is probably not permanent. And that's what we're going to have a quick mumble at now. So what we've got the construction of the Great Western Railway, as we've already mentioned and we've shown you, in the 1850s, and it became the subject then, with people knowing that there'd been something there, subject then to successive excavations in the 1970s and 1980s ahead of road development and other works as well. And it's basically centered on a round, angular, rectangular enclosure about 200 northeast to southwest by 140. So 200 meters in length is the length of the platform at Cardiff Central Station, or one of the platforms at Cardiff Central Station, give you an idea. And there's what we do find at Loughor as well, going by some research that I've done for my own book, is that at Loughor we not only see a Roman military site, but when the military probably leave the site by about the 120s, the civilians move in, and there's pottery manufacture, and trade continues, and it commands this very, very important estuary area. So when the site's being constructed, it's being constructed around the early 70s, 73, 74 AD, constantly being rebuilt. What the usual idea would be that the site you would have barrack blocks, and they would be replaced every 7 years. Well, interesting enough, we've got about eight periods of occupation at the site between those 73 to 120 years AD. And usually, after 7 years, a barrack building would be demolished and rebuilt. It's a lot to do with hygiene. It's a lot to do with new materials. It's a lot to do with training, various other reasons. But timber buildings can stand and be there for decades and decades, but they chose to demolish these buildings and rebuild them. what we do find at Loughor as well is I've got an image from front of one of the books. What we do find at Loughor as well is the remains of a large series of granaries. And so Loughor itself seemed to be this great military supply base as well. Military supply base for going in further into the river, military supply base further on into the east. And when we say military supply base, is it sort of supplying a military campaign into the west, or is it just supplying troops needed in the area for various other things, patrols, and obviously mining down at Dollarcothe and the other mining across the area? Who knows? But the main thing is that I always usually say that the conquest of Cymru Wales was a fairly easy affair, because we don't really have much evidence of much bloodshed or slaughter or any battles. And Loughor, actually, when the military moved away from Loughor in the 120s, very, very similar to the other site that we're going to look at, very similar to Caerleon, actually, because Caerleon was abandoned. And what happened at Caerleon was that the civilians moved in, and they remained at Caerleon for a very, very long time, hundreds and hundreds of years. We do have a further reoccupation by the military at Loughor in a very strange period in the 260s to the early 300s, and it's very strange because we don't really have much reference to military activity or re-garrison in Wales at that time, other than say Cardiff and Saguntium. So Loughor fits in quite strangely there. So again, going back to my images, so I really like this image, and obviously evidence of banking and various large amounts of material that were actually found there. And again, this point that I mentioned, you can see on this little bit of a plan. And what we do see is that the tower itself, the medieval tower, is actually constructed in a corner of this 200 meter long Roman fort, and big chunks of the fort and the civilian vicus have now been eroded away into the estuary. But again, this says what we've been saying about Roman sites, that the Normans move into an area, they go for the nearest Roman site, and they use it for its materials, they use it to try and control the area. So it's a very, very important point there. And again, this is when I said a mouse, I'm actually slightly wrong there. It's a dormouse, clearly a little dormouse, and these would have been stored in large terracotta pots. Were they called dormices? I can't remember, something like that for the dormices. Dormices, the dormouse. Oh God, terrible. But anyway, this was a staple food of the Romans, and you can see the little dormouse there nibbling away at some kind of biscuit, or it's a pet of one of the local owners. So this is what we're up against. We're up against constant erosion of the archaeology. Big chunks of the Roman fort have been eroded away. So you can imagine that not only has the fort had to deal with the Great Western Railway in the 1850s, it had to deal with road building in the 1970s and 1980s, but big chunks of the fort's still there because it's actually under the actual castle itself, which is actually still there. So there we go, Le Carrion by Henry Owen John. Henry Owen John was a really, really good, great archaeologist, and Henry Owen John was an archaeologist who actually excavated eventually at Cosmester Medieval Village, and that Guy Marvel is actually now the director of the Glamorgan Grant Archaeological Trust. So there is hope yet. This report was published in 1997, and there is hope yet because people like me who haven't published some of their work from quite some years, obviously by this, if the work's been going on in the 1970s and 80s, a couple of decades and you can eventually get your work done. But anyway, so it's classed as an auxiliary fort, not a pure Roman military fort. And what you see in there, in that image on the front of this monograph, this publication, you can actually see that those are actually the granaries, which were very, very important, and one of the key reasons why Loughor is actually there in the first place. Again, another one of those views. There's the castle, right? So if you can probably make this out, So we've got the castle there. And if we can sort of skew this in, so we go with this here. Let me get my lines in. So the orientation is, get my little scribbly things in. The orientation is something like this. So in other words, this has all been eroded into the sea, and obviously all of this takes up the spot. And you can see obviously that lots of it has been altered and destroyed or removed by various development. But there's going to be lots underneath the castle, and obviously the castle's benefiting from later Roman building material, which would have naturally been stone, rather than the early material that would not have actually been stone. So looking onto another area of archaeology, this takes me back. When I was we actually moved to Caerleon, so I wanted to make a little bit of not a comparison, but I just wanted to do some local stuff today, just to sort of put meat on the bones, as it were, and that's not a pun. Now, when I was about 10 years old, I remember going to the amphitheatre at Caerleon, and there on the right was a tiny little ticket office, and there was about 3 of these stone cut sarcophagi, which you could lie in or do whatever you like. And anyway, there were these stone sarcophagi there, and I thought it was absolutely amazing. I never really knew what happened to them, but all I can remember, they were like this. So this is from an excavation that they've actually brought the stone sarcophagi in, and you've obviously got the body laid out, and this is very probably more likely to be a Christian burial. And east, west, and south, north is never to me a determination of whether a person is Christian or whatever, and whatever they're buried with is not a determination to do with whatever religion. All I do know is that in the later periods of the Roman Empire, you had to be Christian. So if this body dates to the late 300s, the person's Christian, end of. Whether they're orientated to the north or the south or the east or whatever, it don't mean anything. The other thing as well is about that, this thing about orientation of bodies. If they're facing east, they're Christians, and if they're facing north, they're pagan. Well, if you go to Cowbridge, the church itself actually faces north, so that theory's gone out the window. So I just, again, sort of tickling our fancy and bits of Roman mosaic, and in the very backwater of the Roman world in Wales, but a very, very fine mosaic and lots of other artifacts available. A grinding stone, and you've got amphora, and you've got a storage container, and that looks like a bit of lead piping actually. Again, displayed in the Loughor Museum at Caerleon. And hang on, can I get this? I've got an urgent call coming in. Can you bear with me, folks? Hang on. Hiya.
Not a bad day today, Bill.
Yeah, sun is shining up here, Richard. Same with you?
Yeah, nice in Barry as well.
Yeah, a bit cloudy yesterday. I was in
Yeah,
Cardiff.
wasn't it?
I was in Cardiff yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
In the museum, we went to the Shipburton exhibition, and it was quite cloudy then, but broke through.
Yeah.
But today and tomorrow is going to be good, and then more cloudy.
It's supposed to be, isn't it?
It's autumn, isn't it? What do you expect?
Yeah, so make the most of it now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's time for some autumn gardening when I get around to it. Yeah.
Yeah, some dead leaves everywhere.
Eh?
I said there'll soon be dead leaves everywhere.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got some deciduous trees in the garden. So yeah, my lawn will be covered in a month's time.
Yeah, that's the only thing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's gardening for you, isn't it? If you
Yeah.
want it to look nice, you've got to look after it all year round. Hard graft.
Yeah, that's it.
Hard graft, yeah. So whether I start today, I don't know.
Yeah, it's quiet today, isn't it?
Yeah, before you come on, I suggested we postpone it, because just me there. But anyway, I'll go ahead
Yeah, I was late, so.
at some point. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I'm a bit all over the place. I am. I lost my mum on Friday, so.
Oh, I'm sorry, Richard.
Yeah.
What was expected?
No, I was a bit sudden actually. We'll say that she was 98.
Oh,
So,
right, okay. Still a shock, though, isn't it?
yeah, it is. It was.
Yeah. So you've got all the arrangements to take in hand now, yeah?
Yeah, that's the thing. I've got to sit. My sister as well is. So we're all, but everything's. Oh, it's nightmare with the COVID and everything. Everything's so long-winded.
Yes, yeah. Nothing slowed down, yeah.
So.
Did she live near you?
Oh, she was in a care home.
Not in Barry.
Yeah, not far from me actually.
Oh, okay, well,
about half a mile away. So.
Yeah. I was in a funeral back in July, and there's only sort of 30 there, 30 maximum.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's been relaxed now. I don't know.
Yeah, at the moment it's all right. I know we've been in touch with a crematorium in Barry.
Yeah.
We're just gonna have the service there, and they can take 70 odd apparently.
Oh, okay then. So things have improved then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it's how long we've got to wait now.
Yeah.
And hopefully it won't all suddenly all revert back to how it was previous, earlier in the year.
Yeah.
So,
but the funeral director will take care of all that.
Yeah.
For you, yeah. Tough time. Always a tough time.
Yeah, it is that time. So.
Yeah. I was asking Carl where Wood Street was in Barry. Wood Street.
Oh, it's just Woodfield Road.
No, this is Wood Street. I was told Wood Street. I don't know if you're familiar with Barry at all.
Yeah, no, there was a Wood Street years ago.
Baldrick.
Yeah, but that became
Sorry about that, folks.
This is like a,
It was an extremely important.
Years ago.
It was an important call. Carry on.
I was just on. Bill was on about Wood Street in Barry.
Yeah, go on.
Yep.
The closest to that is Woodfield Road, isn't it?
Yeah, I told him Wood Street in Barry is.
Merthyr Street was once called Wood Street.
Yeah, down in the centre of Barry. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like 100 years ago.
I thought it was still called Wood Street.
No, Merthyr Street.
Oh Christ! I was describing it to Bill. We had we had the meeting that there was like Wood Street in Barry.
Don't worry, press on.
Anyway, press on. Anyway, what was I talking about? So the one thing that we have found in Roman Britain is a huge contrast between the different archaeological sites, the differences between the forts, the differences between what I'm trying to get at is that not all Roman sites had amphitheaters in Britain. Not all Roman sites had aqueducts. Not all Roman sites had all the trappings of ancient Rome back at home. And in many cases, as we've seen over the past few months, that not all of the roads that we talk about are actually the roads that we're told about in textbooks. And I think in many ways, we do have some really good Roman remains in Britain. some of the best sets of Roman remains seemingly are to be either found in places like York or Chester or Lincoln, but we do have really impressive remains like this amphitheatre at Caerleon and the massive walls at Caerwent. Caerwent would be very interesting to look at next week. So I wanted to do that list. I wanted to do that list of things to look at. But before we actually do that, and I need to actually write in my diary that we are going to do Caerwent next week, which would be very, very useful for us to do. So I'm going to write down Caerwent. So these are actually, I don't know if you've been there, these are actually indicating the pool that can actually be seen, the outlines of the outside pool that was associated with Caerleon, and in the heart of Caerleon, the Roman military bathhouse, which this bathhouse was still standing in the 1100s. The great vaulting of the bathhouse as described by Geoffrey of Monmouth was still all standing in the 1100s. And I just wanted to show you another thing. We mentioned about Loughor and lots of Loughor being eroded into the sea. And we do actually have bits of the likes of Caerleon that have been destroyed by development, but not due to erosion. And it's quite surprising what of Caerleon actually is actually around today still. So if I get my little tick box in, this is something I don't do. So we've got the amphitheatre, that's still there. All these walls are still here. This bit of wall is under the turf, and you can make out big tracks of this wall as well. We have nice tracks of the barrack blocks that are actually available for us to see. Actually, one of the barrack blocks is the original barrack block at Caerleon, and the other two sets are actually reconstructed directly on the Roman barrack blocks, so they can actually protect the ones underneath. So what else do we actually have? We have bits of the fortress baths, which are over here. Also, these areas are under green fields, and these have been excavated over the past few years as well. All of these are sort of under green fields, so that's sort of doable. We know where the gateway was, and also if we go further in, sort of a bit further in down this road, we've got the headquarters where they found a little bit of Roman mosaic, and that's where the church of Caerleon is to be found. So there's big chunks of Caerleon which are still out there that you can actually see. And obviously we haven't mentioned the Hanbury Arms, where lots of material has actually been reused. And one point I didn't make earlier on when we looked at Loughor was actually the reuse of material. I probably mentioned it a little bit. Reuse of material to build the castle at Loughor. So again, if we do this and we go like this, and what we also see is that there's four sets of barracks. I said there was three. This is the one here that you can actually still see today, and these are the reconstructed ones they're actually built directly on the original barracks. And all these little things, you can actually see the ovens. You can see some of these ovens. Mention a bit of a cookhouse in a bit of a tower there. Got a bit of a tower here, and you've got the remains of the latrines as well. So all this, as you can see, is just fascinating. And actually, I think I'm right in saying that there are no Roman legionary HQ barrack blocks on display anywhere in Western Europe. So these are the only ones. The barrack blocks. There are obviously lots that haven't been built on, but the ones actually on display, these are the legionary HQ barrack blocks. These are the only ones on display in Western Europe, and I actually believe anywhere in the world. I'm not really sure of that fact. And it's sort of indicating some of the sort of changes there. And then the fort's been abandoned, and it's over to civilian use. So,
Carl,
yeah, go for it.
In our Bear Fort in South Shields, of course, they have reconstructed a barrack block, but that is a reconstruction, a modern reconstruction to show.
Yeah. But that's when I mentioned legionary HQ barrack blocks, there are other ones in the country. You are right, Bill. But actually, legionary HQ barrack blocks, this is very unique at Caerleon. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. So this itself, when we think about, I'm not showing any images, am I? So let's just get there. Oh, come on, Bill. What film's this from?
My favorite. Are you not entertained?
Exactly. Are you not entertained? Exactly. So one thing I wanted to do, so we had a little bit of Loughor, we had a little bit of Caerleon. We know where we're going next week, which is great. So I've looked at 15 truly bizarre facts about ancient Rome, or facts about Rome that might be things that you know about or things that you don't know about. Ancient Romans did everything from drinking gladiators' blood to washing clothes in urine. I think we knew about the washing clothes in urine, but really not about the blood. Gladiator's blood, the gladiator there he is. Good old Russell Crowe. Gladiator blood was recommended by Roman physicians to aid various ailments, including epilepsy and infertility. And to be honest with you, with the iron in the blood and with the other minerals in the blood, I think they may have got that right. When you think about it, because we don't drink human blood today, and maybe yeah. Anyway, so that's one of the unusual facts. That's one of the facts. So we're going to go on to another little bit of an unusual fact. So we're going to share this one now. And what film's this from, Bill?
That was the hang on, that was Quo Vadis.
I think you are right. That this might be actually Quo Vadis. Who is the Oscar-winning actor there?
Peter Ustinov playing
Peter
Nero.
Exactly. Purple clothing was a status symbol and reserved only for emperors or senators. To achieve the color, a dye was made from murex seashells. Now, murex seashells, they come from the Mediterranean, don't they? So, oh no, it's not the Mediterranean, it's the Red Sea, isn't it? Yeah, murex seashells, I think, come from the Red Sea. It was treason for anyone other than the emperor to dress completely in purple. So this is where Richard wears a stripy top, because he doesn't want to be seen wearing purple. So let's go on to another fact, right? Now this is we haven't had much lewdness in these lectures, but we're gonna have a little bit of a lewdness now. You're looking at what image are you looking at, guys?
Oh, it's Miss Helena doing the usual. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Claudius has a bit of stuff on the side. He's a naughty girl.
Emperor's third wife, Valeria Messalina, was a nymphomaniac. According to ancient historians, she once competed with a prostitute to see who could have the most sexual partners in a night. How does that work? Anyway, yeah, well, I don't think we want to go there, but it's odd. It's odd, Bill, that you recognise that straight away.
Well, I did, yeah. I'm a great admirer of the 1960s I, Claudius TV series.
Yeah.
Where all odds were portrayed well, without any sort of fuss and any the glamour associated or the sensationalism associated with modern productions. Yeah.
That was what am I thinking about? Richard Graves. He was the writer, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, Richard Graves. Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I Claudius and Claudius the God. Yeah.
Did any of them ever wear these things around their neck in it?
Not in the film. No, definitely not.
Richard's got one of these. He wears every time I see him.
Keep my keys on it.
I've got one a key ring, Carl. I bought in Turkey actually. One of those, isn't it? Yeah, a key ring. Do you want to see it?
Yeah, if we got to see it, maybe you leave it till next week. Oh my God. So phalluses were considered good luck charms. They were worn as charms on necklaces or hung in doorways as wind chimes as a way to ward off evil spirits. So the phallus to the ancient Romans was a symbol not only of fertility, but a massive symbol for protection. More of a symbol for protection. And you've got Propaeus, who was the who was a Roman god with an absolutely massive member. But mind you, we won't say any more because Richard's missus will come into the room and get very excited because she went to our dodgy Christmas lecture once. It was all about debauchery and Saturnalia, Bill. You missed that one. And to be honest with you, the last thing that she said, I will come to another lecture as long as it's about a subject like this.
Whoops, hello. What's going on there?
What is going on here? Exactly. What is going on here? So left-handed people were considered unlucky. The word sinister was originally Latin objected from sinistra, sinistrum, that meant left, but took on the meaning of evil or unlucky by the classical Latin era. So, I didn't know that. Did you know about that, Bill? That being left-handed in?
Did. Yeah,
sinister
and dexter.
Ah, sinister dexter, sinister dexter, sinister dexter. Yeah. Did you know? Okay, then I'm going to pick on Richard. Did you know that, Richard?
No, I heard that one before.
So, all right, then what we're going to do, right? We're going to find out if the next one Bill knows, right, and whether I know it. Bill, you got to guess this. You got to guess this next one, right? And I'm not going to give you a clue. What is this image about?
That's from I Claudius. That's Caligula going loopy, dressed as a maiden, trying to impress everyone. Played by John Hurt.
Oh, that was John Hurt, was it? Right.
Yeah.
So Emperor Caligula often dressed in public, dressed in women's clothing.
Yeah. You want to watch that series, Carl, if you got time?
I should watch it again and get some tips.
Yeah, you should.
I really, really should. I'm not even going to ask if Bill knows knows what this next thing is about because he's going to know, right? But the next coming up is going to be, what's the name of the horse, Bill?
The name of the horse is, hang on, he was a senator, wasn't he?
Yeah, the horse was, he's got, do you know what, we should do points on this one. You are right. So you got 1 point for
Caligula's horse.
You get 2 points.
Oh, well, what did you start with? Give me a clue in the first letter.
I.
Oh, blimey.
Right, I'll read out a bit more information. Caligula's favourite horse lived in a marble stable with an ivory manger. Oh my God. Caligula also tried to make him a consul, the highest elected office of the Roman Republic and the most important job in the government. The horse was called...
Not Icarus, was it? No.
No, close. You get 1 point for that because you were close. Inctatus. Incitatus. Inctatus. Inctatus.
Yeah.
So you got a point for that, Bill. You get a point for that. So this next one isn't for guessing because this is another level. This next one. Hang on a minute. This next one's another level. Are you seeing these popping up straight away every time I show them?
Gaius Valerius Catullus.
Yes, they are coming up straight away, which is absolutely brilliant. So yes, Gaius Valerius Catullus. Now, where does this come into things? In the first, in the last days of the years before Jesus Christ, the poet Gaius Valerius Catullus addressed 2 of his critics, another poet, Furius, and a senator, Aurelius, in a poem considered so vulgar and obscene that was not translated outside of Latin until the 1900s. So, you know what, we should have had that poem when we did that evening, Richard. Oh, actually, we're gonna read it out anyway. No, I'm not. No, no, I'm not doing it. It's too bad. It involves debauchery and men-on-men action. So we'll leave that one. We'll leave that to one of those evenings, Richard. I was just about to read it and I thought, no. Right, this next one. Romans thought that the early Christians were practicing cannibalism when they heard about them eating bread and wine as symbolic representations of the body and blood of Christ. So they actually thought they were drinking human blood and that they were cannibals. And that the bread represented the flesh of his Lord himself. So they actually thought the Christians were actually cannibals. Did you know that, Bill? Richard?
Yeah.
It makes sense.
It does make sense, but it's too obvious. We don't think about it.
Yeah.
No, it is actually just too obvious. So the next one, people would socialize in communal toilets. Rome had over 140 public toilets. Yeah,
they needed them too.
So I don't know how we have this conversation with these guys. It's just hang on a minute. So that guy's saying, hang on a minute, I just got to I just got to wash my sponge. And that guy's saying, oh, you know, your missus, you know, you need to sort her out. And this guy's a bit depressed. And that guy's saying, pull your finger out, he's saying. The other guy says, yeah, pull it out my arse. No, I shouldn't have said that. But basically, you've got sponge on a stick there, right, to wipe your rear ends.
Where does that come from, Carl? Is that any evidence for that they actually use sponge on a stick?
We do know that in the Roman Legionary Pact that they did actually carry a sponge with them, but to be honest with you, there's no need to use a sponge at all. You can actually just use a jug of water. Muslims use a jug of water to wash their rear ends, and seeing as this, I can't see why you just don't fill up a jug of water and wash your rear end. That would be really clean, right? And you'd have a clean backside rather than we don't want to go into
or even using your hand. Think about it, you know, just to clean things down a bit. Yeah, you got plenty of water there.
Yeah, exactly. So so the next one is this image, and it's wealthy Romans would have extravagant and decadent banquets that lasted for hours. In order to continue eating, they would induce vomiting. Christ almighty. So in other words, you had buckets full of vomit. That must have been great fun. That must have been really good for the plants. Really good for the plants.
Yeah.
Now here is one that might not be readily known about. Okay, it's this image. Are we seeing it?
Yep.
Now, well, obviously it's to do with hair. Hair dyeing was popular among women, with red and blonde being the most popular colors. Dye colors were achieved through different ingredients like goat fat, beechwood ashes, henna, saffron, and bleach. So the bleach was going to be ammonia, isn't it? I think. So hair dyes, beechwood ashes, that makes sense. Henna being a natural and saffron being natural. Yeah, cool. So anyway, that's about hair dyes. And we've got 3 left. So let's just do these things. And Bill, you've got to remember the instrument. Well, Richard, yeah, get the instrument in there. What is the instrument that was used to clean off somebody's fat? Are you seeing the image?
Oh, the strigil.
Yes, a strigil. Yeah,
Mm.
it is actually a strigil. And while Romans were extremely hygienic, they did not use soap. It's always an amazing fact that they didn't use soap.
Well, what was it known then? Soap 2,000 years ago?
The thing is, soap wouldn't survive, would it? It might have been an everyday product that we don't actually know about, you know.
Yeah.
Instead, to get clean, they would apply perfumed oils to their skin and then scrape it off with a tool known as a strigil. So that's that. And this is a rather very interesting one. Well, they've all been interesting, to be honest. We've got two left. This next image, right? You seen an image of two people and a boy?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Now, did you know this next one, Richard? Not everyone wore togas in Roman society. Only freeborn Roman men were allowed to wear togas as a sign of Roman citizenship, while women wore stolas like that. Stolas. Women wore stolas like that. Strangely, prostitutes were forbidden to wear the stola, so instead they wore togas. So prostitutes went around dressed like men. Now, did you know that, Richard?
No, new to me.
Question is, would you pick up a woman on a street corner? I'm sure none of us would, dressed as a man. Never mind.
And there are plenty of those around these days.
Exactly. And then the next one is going to be very, very obvious. And this is the last image from today. Bill, can you tell me? Well, no, not Bill. Richard, can you tell me what's going on there? Go on, Rich.
Wouldn't have a clue.
It's wash day in Rome.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, washing on the line.
No, but basically, what's happening is the urine is dripping down on people as it dries.
Oh, that's nice.
So they're washing clothes in urine. So obviously they're washing the clothes in urine, and then they must be swilling them off. It must have been a lot of water being used. Urine because of the.
How do they know they didn't use anything else? Like Fuller's Earth or something like that.
We do believe that they did use Fuller's Earth, actually.
Yeah.
Urine, because of the ammonia it contains, was used to clean clothes. The urine was collected by foulons, the ancient Roman version of dry cleaners from around the city. In other words, what's going on is that you can only use male urine to wash clothes because it's got it's got the right what you need to wash clothes.
Ammonia.
Ammonia, exactly. So it's male urine. Male urine. So on that note, right, with a fitting image, do any of you guys watch the series Outlander?
No.
Oh yes, I watched it from the start.
Me and Michelle got up to when they were in America, and we got really upset with that guy who raped Bryony. And she had a child with him, and then we well, I think we got to series 5, didn't we? And I think, yeah. Anyway, but can you remember in the first season there was the main, oh god, the woman in it, I can't remember her name. Claire, that's it. She ends up washing clothes with local Scottish people, and then she comes out, and then they start to say that she smells of piss or pish. And she was, the thing is, in that it portrays women's urine, Bill.
Yeah.
She's told to pee in a bucket. So I'm thinking, if what I'm saying that you can only use male urine, in that they're portraying using female urine.
Well, it still contains a lot of ammonia, same as men's, but would there be any other thing in female urine?
Yeah, I think there would. I think
they're monthly cycles or something. I don't know.
yeah. I think
Maybe it's considered unclean.
well, not to these Scottish women, but mind you, Scottish women do strange things.
Yeah. Very good. Swapping around here then everywhere. Good.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, right, okay, on that note, next week we're going to do KARL-JAMES.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be able to make next week, Carl.
Right, I do understand why.
Yeah.
Is that oh, really, that soon?
Oh, no.
Oh,
No,
right.
I got people coming down, so.
Right, okay.
So at the moment, any change, and I'll
Let me know.
obviously I'll, be along.
Let me know. Oh, and Jessica was wanted to know if you wanted a hairband, an Archaeology Cymru hairband.
Oh no.
Apparently, Jessica wears a hairband, and now Rosamund's going to start wearing a hairband, and they reckon that we should all wear hairbands now, Bill.
Oh.
And Bill,
what if you haven't got much hair?
Anyway, the point is, I was going to say, Bill, that finally they've said that we can start back using Hope Baptist Church, but we don't know if it's going to be next week or not.
Oh, that's good. I think that'd be a good move. Yeah. Good. I'm sure we'll get an update from Jess tomorrow or from Anne.
Oh yeah, it's Thursday tomorrow, isn't it?
Yeah.
So remember Sinister Dexter, Richard, and you won't go too far wrong. Left, right, left, right, left, right. So anyway, thanks you two guys for joining us today. And as Bill doesn't like everyone being called guys and girls, well, I'm just saying it. Right. Anyway, people, I will. You have a good time tomorrow, Bill and Richard. I will hopefully see you Monday.
Yeah.
And
Thursday?
yeah, well, I've been pretty good. I was pretty good. I was there before you.
Okay, thank you, Carl.
My pleasure, Bill. I'll see you soon, Bill.
See you soon. Ta-ra then. See you
I'll
soon.
see you soon, Richard. And make sure, Bill, you got the right address for me. He's gone. Anyway, Richard, I'll see you.
Yeah, okay, Carl. See you soon.
Take care. Cheers, mate. So long. Bye. Bye-bye. 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 Bye. Anyway, thanks for watching today on my Roman session. Quite odd. Thank you very much. In wonderful Treorchy today. Thank you.